The best attack operators for new players. Subtitles are available. Deciding the best attack operator for new players, and we will go through several categories, and depending on the requirement, they'll be marked differently. I want to talk what each operator does here. Check the link in the description to see what an operator does in a very short 2 to 3 lines. Graphs and all the numbers for the nerds can be found in the description. The video was published on the 11th of April. Note, I'm not going to talk about every number in the graph, because I will be repeating myself. So again, if you want to see a full picture, open the spreadsheet and follow me up when I'm talking. And the subcategories are loadout, gadget difficulty, map knowledge, can you be detriment to yourself, playing against the other new players, and can you be detriment to your team. And reminder, this is a tier list for new players, and overall score is 20. Let's start alphabetically. Amaru has a very good loadout, but joining yourself for a window can cost your life, especially when nobody knows where to position themselves. Therefore, there is a high chance that you will join yourself into a defender and die. You don't need as much map knowledge to use her gadget, but when playing against new people, and if you don't just rush through the objectives window, you will most likely surprise new people, especially if they don't know how to use the sound. Your team cannot be screwed over your zipline, and she's an okay solo queue operator. Ashe has probably one of the best loadouts for the new people. Free speed with a solid non-recoil gun and flashes. And you really cannot mess up your team with her launcher unless you open a random wall with no faults. You don't need a huge map knowledge and the gadget is very straightforward. Just don't use them on the standard barricades. She's an alright solo queue operator. Blackbeard, and he suffers from having bad loadout, but in exchange you can survive multiple headshots which can be super useful for the new people. Obviously, you should realize that Blackbeard alongside with any other operator can build up bad habits. With Blackbeard you will most likely be able to win any fair 1 versus 1 gunfight. You don't need a huge map knowledge, but he's not a good solo queue operator, he is more team oriented. Blitz. Loadout is low because he doesn't have a primary gun. However, with the gadget and especially against the new people, you can be very annoying Blitz in a positive way, because many people fail to shoot your feet when you're sprinting, or fail to shoot your hand when you're crouching. He's a complex operator to master, and is just an okay solo queue operator. Bach has a very good loadout, but he's losing frags very soon, especially know how to pair Skeleton Key up with the C4. Don't use his DMR, thank you. But on the other hand, with the opening hold you can make yourself killed if you're not expecting an opponent or if you simply opened a wrong hole. Thankfully the switch from the skeleton key to the primary gun is pretty quick. Capito is an operator that is currently an S tier or very high A tier in any competitive tier list. But since his loadout is just fine and can be very complex to play with, he's just an okay recommendation for the new people. You need to have map knowledge, but not much, but if you are facing new people, in some situations you probably won't need his gadget at all. Tokebi has the worst loadout of the all attacker but has an excellent gadget. You cannot mess the gadget up, you can just use it on the wrong timing, like immediately when you spawn, but I'm sure that you won't be doing that. Just because of her gadget, now smoke grenade, she's a very good solo queue operator. Finka is coming with an average loadout and a gadget that you again cannot fuck up unless your teammates get used to the recoil. But since you will most likely play with another new people, that Finka boost to lower down the recoil would be very handy. Fuse lacks of being 2 or 3 speed, and that's why his loadout is not excellent. I'm not asking for a such buff, because 2 or 3 speed AK-74 doesn't sound great, especially when community outrages over F2. Gadget can be very deadly against the other new people, as they don't understand the sound, but when you're placing these you're pretty much vulnerable for the C4s, or flanks, or even bullets if you have balls to put the charges on the windows. Glaves. And not only that he has a subpar loadout, but he has also a pretty complex gadget that can be detriment to you if you're tunnel visioned with the yellow banana scope. I wouldn't recommend to play this guy as a new player. On the polar opposite, we have Grillo that has a very good loadout and gadget that you cannot screw up your team, and even if you threw them randomly. To use them in the full sense, you need to understand where stairs, and that's pretty much it. She's a great solo queue as well. Hibana can be also a good operator to play due to her loadout and gadget that is pretty safe. You can be far from the wall that you're trying to breach. She's a very good solo queue operator and requires to know which walls to be opened. Yana is a very interesting operator that has a solid loadout, ARX or G30C, as you like, with the frags. If she was a free speed, she will be unstoppable. But there's always a but. When you use her gadget, you're stationary target, and if you start using her gadget in places that you shouldn't do that, you'll most likely be killed. IQ has a solid loadout, but you will also need to be aware when you can or cannot use her gadget. You cannot run inside of the building with her gadget on. Sometimes you will have to check in the building, and when you see something, you will have to know approximately where it is. This is especially important when you check electronics from the roof, where you cannot destroy through the soft floor. Understanding what is beneath or above you is somewhat required for IQ, but as well as understanding her counters and what she counters. Jackal, the another S tier operator for new players, is because he has an excellent loadout and an excellent gadget for the new people. Jackal's gadget does everything for you, from clearing up the roamers, smoking off important angles, and so on. Try not to use his Enox for the whole round, it can screw you for a bit. Kali Kali, very situational operator with relatively bad loadout but a gadget that cannot make you killed and you don't want to solo queue with her. Or at least I don't want to. She can be fun to play, but other than that, don't. Lion is coming out as an operator with an OK loadout and a gadget that won't make you or your team killed, very similar to Dokebi. You can only mistime it. It maybe can kill you if you go full no brain during the Lion scan. That's only if you're no brainer, which I'm sure you're not. He's not a solo queue operator. Maverick. Pretty interesting that I put him in the D tier, right? He's very similar to Capito in the terms of competitiveness. Maverick is outstanding when you understand how he is played, but you, as a new player, won't know how to play him and will die over and over again when you're opening the holes. He has a great loadout, free speed, frags, and a solid assault rifle, but his gadget will get you killed. He's a very solid operator if you don't want to use his gadget. Montaigne is actually similar to Maverick, but just doesn't have good loadout. Not only that he is extremely hard to play with, you require team to know how to play around you. That's not even happening in the Platinum or higher matches. And it will be weird for me to expect you and the team around you to know how to exactly Montaigne. Once you understand how to play with him, he'll be a nightmare to play against. Nock is pretty selfish operator with an OK loadout. She has frags, and the gadget that you still must not go in no brain zone. Just because you won't be seen on the cameras doesn't mean that you can just go anywhere. Nomad with an average loadout that is very similar to Grillot cannot affect you or your teammates, but requires you to know where the common rotations are, usually staircases. Very good operator to play with, because you most likely won't be flanked. And due to that reason, an excellent solo queue operator. Sledge is a very good newbie operator because of his loadout, and because of that is he a very good solo queue operator. However, similar to the Buck, if you open a random horizontal wall and during the transition between your sledge and the gun, you might be gunned down. He could have been actually in a lower tier, but you will be able to see notation in the spreadsheet where Sledge could have dropped for a bit. Thatcher has an OK loadout, but most importantly, you will most likely follow your hard breacher, Hibana or Termite, till they open the wall, so the map knowledge is not what you need to have. Termite. And yep, he ended up lower than I also imagined, but stats do not lie. Yes, he's usually required for any site, and he's very continuously picked in a pro match. But when we are talking about the newbie friendly operators, what matters is the loadout, and if you're detriment to yourself. Termite brings average loadout, and you usually are safe when putting the charges, but you don't want to pick him in the solo queue. Fitch brings also an OK loadout. F2 was nerfed over and over again with an OK gadget that cannot get yourself killed in the most situations. She's really straightforward. You don't need as much map knowledge to get used to the gadget, as long as you have found the objective. As shooting with her gadget is a click buttons, so it's not that hard, right? Speaking of not being hard, Ying is polar opposite. Her gadget is pretty hard to master, and not only that you know how much do you have to cook, you need to know the physics behind it, because the flashes in this game are something not to rely on. Knowing ins and outs of the Candela will in most situations give you a hint if you flashed what you wanted or not. She has an average gun and she will be okay to solo queue, especially with the smoke and the 4 Candela. And the final operator is Zofia that brings very good loadout and a gadget that is pretty useful when it comes to the solo queue. She is very similar to Ashe, but is a 2-speed with usually 3 more breaching charges. Thank you for watching this video and staying with me for this long, and thanks all the patrons and YouTube members for making this video available. If you want to learn all the basics and advanced things about the Siege, make sure to give me a like, subscribe and click notification bell to get all notifications from my channel. Make sure to give me feedback down in the comment section below.